Hello and welcome to your textured hair, maybe a little bit frizzy, and then areas that don't look very defined on the top layers. Um, or I guess I don't know what level curl that would be. Maybe like a 4 or 5 level curl. I'm also, so if you're like, is this the curly hair one? No, not quite. I'm still gonna do a curly hair one where you can definitely see the curls and waves. And I did a wavy one. So this is kind of like the in-between but more textured hair. Like nondescript. You're like, I don't really see strands of hair to draw. It's just there. Okay. So I did look at the top layer of her hair. So I picked out some major chunks like here. I did the one overlapping her face so you could see hair on top of skin. I did kind of start adding like the contour outline, and I started shading in between like the lighter background in between the chunks of hair. You don't have to do every little piece, but you are definitely going to want to look like, sorry, let me get this a little bit closer to you guys. So over here, I didn't have time to draw because I'm trying to hurry up and get all these videos done, but I would have drawn like that chunk. I would have left out like the wispy kind of frizzy hairs on that side. I would probably do this chunk. I would do this one. So you're going to actually draw up, and I would pull the light value up in between so you get that cool contour outline. So that is actually where I would start, so that you know, like as you're adding texture and line, like where am I avoiding? So I kind of added some pieces. So this is the background. So you want to outline it, but then fade in. And you can kind of like scumbling along the edge, but match that outline and then fade out. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you're definitely going to want to look at the major chunks so it looks like hair. And then fade out. And then you'll add whatever kind of mark making you're going to end up adding. I'm going to pull some light value into that part. Okay, so she was like, this is all negative space. So you're going to do the contour outline, and then you'll blend it. So that's still, I just did the major chunks, but she has some smaller little pieces. So to get the subtle layered effect, like that is not exactly what hers looks like. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and pinch it, and then I'm going to draw back in like the layers that are behind the big chunks. So I'm going to kind of, or you could use your pencil top eraser, I guess. So I'm going to put in like some of the, just kind of scribbling a little, some of those strands. So layered in, so it looks like hair that looks further away and then hair that looks closer up. All right, so for the actual hair, I did give myself a few places where there were highlights. I did chunk out like ends of some curls. So that's where I'm going to start. And so I'm, you know, her hair is still fairly dark. So I'm going to start with curls that look like they're on top of, so they're a little bit lighter. And wherever it's bending, I'm going to add a little bit more and then kind of like fade into what I have. And then I'm going to do some like light suggestive scumbling. Okay, so this is a whole chunk of hair and it goes down into over her face. So I'm just going to add a little bit. And so notice that I just added it in the curves, really. The curves of her hair. Or curls. If you don't have any, then scumbling might work like a little bit better. So like in here where there's texture, but there's really not definition, I'm just gonna kind of like gently, and I'm holding my pencil like more towards the middle or at the end. So it depends on how tight of a curl you have, like what level of curl you have. And I'm just kind of like filling in some of the dark places, but I'm definitely adding a little bit more on, and And I usually like to do the edges, so they kind of, the edges of the tips of the curls, I guess you could say. Okay, so over here, like if I want to look like it's bending. And then I'm just going to kind of, remember less is more, because her hair is kind of dark. So I just want like a little, and we're going to do some of this with the blender too, so it looks a little more, less detailed, I guess, nondescript. Okay, where it's bending out, kind of adding in. So this hair is actually way easier to do with pencil, but with charcoal, like your natural inclination is to try to want to like draw all these little hairs, but then you're gonna have really light hair and you want to keep it fairly dark. So just be a little bit careful. I feel like this piece needs a little something. Okay, closer to the face. So I'm just adding a little. Okay, medium blender. So you really want to keep the shapes because it's easy to just have it all kind of like drift away on you. So I'm off patting. For the contour outline, you know, obviously you're going to want to get a pretty decent edge to start with and fade into your background, and then you'll kind of come back into that. So get that all blended. Then I call this touch blending, where you're not like actually blending it, you're just kind of touching where you've put the charcoal. So I'm gonna kind of, and so just like with the face, your first layer is the most important layer. And I also like to, while I'm in that area, I'm gonna add, like just with my blender, like right there, I use just my blender, kind of like you're wiping off your blender in the darker parts, because her hair has a lot of range of value actually. Okay. And we're gonna put back in the dark, so don't worry if it gets like too light. I mean, if it's starting to get really light, then I would like back off of how much you're gonna add in the next layer. So I'm gonna kind of like fill in like around that piece, putting in like the fuzziness. Texture. So if you have a line, you should go over it, and then I kind of wipe off my blender like in the same kind of like area, like motion. So the second layer is super important, and then after that you're really just making a texture with your blender. So like my hair is so hard to do. Not really, because you actually have less layers. Sorry, that was like supposed to be the negative space happening. I'm pulling into it. Okay, so now I'm gonna come back with my bigger blender, so I feel like I got most of it, not all, but this is, I want you guys to have time to work. So I'm using the dirtier end of my blender, dirty, a relative term, the end that has more white on it. I mean, if you want to, if your hair is big, feel free to use the bigger blender over the whole thing. Okay. All right, so now, super carefully, I'm just gonna use my bigger blender and just kind of blend over everything to dull it down. And I want to give myself like a slight medium value. Let me go back into that. slight medium value, not medium, super dark medium, super dark mid-tone. And if you're like, yeah, that's what my hair looks like, then you might not have to erase back out. But with the kneaded eraser, let's try the pencil top eraser first. I'm gonna go back in, like where my highlight parts are, and erase out some hairs. Just because it probably got pretty dark pretty light where the highlights are. And you can kind of fade it into what you have. Then with this pencil, I would scumble a little bit to where you're kind of, but scumble like, let me get a pen to show you this. Kind of like where you're kind of going, sorry, that's hard for you guys to see. Like where you're kind of like going with the flow of the hair. With the eraser. So you can use pencil top eraser. And so since a lot of our, especially like when you get by the face and stuff, since a lot of our hair is dark, okay, be careful brushing off. Okay, then because I took away all the dark, I'm gonna put it back in with the kneaded eraser. So I'm gonna kind of go back in and pull back in. Some of the dark parts. Okay. Okay, so it's still looking fairly dark. That's good. I'm just gonna add a little bit extra to like the tips of some of the chunks of hair for some definition. So here, just a little, like maybe a few little. And then if you feel like I need some more texture that's lighter in value, you can kind of like scumble a little bit with the pencil. And then I would definitely go back over it with the blender. And so I would do this everywhere. So just remember that you should probably do like 2 really good layers, like really good, where you're adding and blending and taking away and adding and blending and taking away 2 times. Then in the last layers, you're really just kind of going back and putting the darks back in and then adding a little to the light parts. So anywhere where like it's just straight up dark but it has like kind of nondescript areas, I would just kind of like look at the level of curl, but kind of scumble. Scumble, scumble. Be careful because we don't want you to look all gray. Okay, so then I am gonna go back in and kind of go with the flow of the hair and put like some of my darks back in. And I have to keep pinching the kneaded eraser. Put the darks back in, darks back in. And then occasionally you have to like pull the kneaded eraser to clean it because it will get full of white charcoal. And so I'm keeping like a little point so I can keep pinching it and making it pointy. So you don't have to try to draw every little piece of your hair, especially if you have like highly textured hair. You just want to get like the texture going on there. So if I'm looking like under here is darker, well then that means I'm going to erase back out more in the under part. So just kind of look at the general, and you can kind of tap to give it like that texture to it, to where it's not strands of hair necessarily, like chunks of hair. So you're going to put the dark back in. So I would do at least one more layer. I would put another layer where it's really light. I feel like I have a piece like laying on top that I need to do in there. And then I would blend again, and then I would erase out again. And then in my very last layer, like I kind of showed you, I would go back in and define some edges or points to some curls. And like fade up. And if you're like, okay, that looks good how it is, then don't erase. All right, so textured, nondescript hair for you.